Hey, welcome everybody. It is the June Mix It Up, and yeah, we've been doing this a year now. Time flies when you're having fun. We're going to have some special celebration at some point because I just realized it's been a year, so I haven't really put anything together. But we'll do something at some point. And like I said, I have been looking forward to this conversation. This is going to be very, very interesting. Wow, what an esteemed panel we have on with us today, and we'll get to that in a second. As always, want to make sure everybody's clued into the community events, and so we'll go ahead and catch you up to speed on that. We have, of course, July's Mix It Up is set up and open for registration, and we're going to be talking about AppSource, and in particular, favorite apps in AppSource. So we'll have the folks from our strategic partner program on to share their favorites. We also, I just did a discussion with them that we call the New View Huddle about how add-ons, third-party add-ons, ISVs, all of that has changed with the migration from Nav to Business Central. That's out on our YouTube channel if you want to listen to that, but we'll be diving a little bit more into apps and their favorites in July, and then we'll invite everybody to share their favorites as well. So we'll do that. And then we've got DynamicsCon 2021 2. I don't know how to reference it. It's the second one this year, and that's coming up in September. And then Community Summit North America is happening in Houston in October, and I really don't have a lot of details on what that's going to be like, but you've probably seen some notices about that, so you can investigate that. And then, of course, the local user group meetings. I think they're maintaining this schedule fairly well, and it's open for everybody in the virtual format. So want to make sure you're plugged in on that, all that. Okay. A dangerous summer drink is on the menu from our bartender today called Mom's Lemonade. It sounds innocuous enough, but I don't think it is. So bartender Kim, what do you got for us?
Well, so like most mothers, they don't measure recipes. So I had to force her to give me the measurements. Now, I'm not going to say that they're accurate because I'm pretty sure that her shot glass is maybe this big as compared to the normal size shot glass. So I'm not entirely sure how much tequila actually ends up on this because I feel like I can drink a lot of tequila and usually one or two and I'm done with her. But so it's a silver tequila. I happen to have my favorite here, Casa Noble. It's just really good. Coconut water and a little bit of lemonade. She uses like Crystal Light because she's watching her calories. And I'm like, okay, Mom. That's yeah.
I like your mom already, Kim.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder what was behind the Crystal Light when you sent this to me.
Yeah, because it's a skinny drink, right? I'm like, okay, Mom. But if you drink
We're all about skinny drinks. Okay.
Yeah. If you drink 4 of them,
I think we need to meet Mom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
At some point.
She's a trip, that's for sure. So, well, I'm just not even going to measure it because we all know how this goes for me. So that's maybe a shot or a shot and a half. I'm pretty sure it's not the same that she puts in it. A little bit of coconut water. And then she puts in some lemonade. I mean, my mother used to make, like, she's famous for making non-alcoholic drinks alcoholic. When I was a kid, I can remember she used to make homemade Kahlua. And she would give that to me at night as a hot chocolate. Like, she'd warm up milk and put Kahlua in it. So I'd go to sleep at night. So, yeah. So it doesn't surprise me that she puts tequila in her lemonade. Yep, that tastes about right. I'm pretty sure she puts more tequila in hers. I hope she never watches this. Otherwise, I'll be in big trouble. But yeah, that's it. It's just that easy.
I'm calling her for 5 minutes.
Yeah, you'll get me in trouble. That's it. Cheers. It's a nice, refreshing drink for sure.
Pretty straightforward, right? I'm really intrigued by the coconut water as well. That's a good call.
She's like, it makes it a little creamy. And I'm like, usually you don't hear that word with tequila, but okay. It actually works. I don't know why.
All right. Well, thanks to Mom, dear old Mom, getting us drunk. Good.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's get into the discussion. If you haven't shared your webcam yet, please do. If this is your first Mix It Up, very informal, just having a good time and connecting with community and thinking a little bit outside the box and hoping to connect you with others with good ideas as well. We are recording this. We'll put it up on the YouTube channel after, and of course, post a link into the meetup group so you can be notified when that happens. Great idea to join the meetup group. That way you'll know about future events and when those get scheduled so you can register and not miss out on any others as well. And what else did I forget? We'll post a survey link at the end too, because we're always interested in feedback and ideas going forward. And with that, let's go ahead and introduce our panel. Like I said, really been thinking about the experience and the shifts we've seen over the past year with training, continuous learning, and how companies are approaching that, and got to thinking about, as we're returning a little bit more closer to normal, or the new normal, right? What's that going to look like going forward? What have folks been through? What are their struggles been? What have they learned in the process? Have they figured out, some new methods and approaches to be successful? I personally think this past year has shown a high need for continuous training and learning, right? So, but everybody's struggled to get that done with just kind of keeping the business and the doors open, right? So, lots to unpack here. And before we get to that, let's go ahead and do introductions with the panel, and then we'll go down the line, have the panel share their thoughts. Let's ask questions, have a discussion around this. I will be tracking time because I want to make sure we get through everyone, because I know they all have some great thoughts to share, and I want to make sure we don't run out of time. So I'll be watching that just a little bit. So let's just quickly do introductions. If you want to say who you are, where you are, what version you're on, and just kind of any quick opening comments, then we'll circle back around and dive in. So I'm just going to use the order that's on the screen. Kind of randomly. Missy, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Yes, I'd be happy to. Hi, everybody. My name is Missy Campbell. I've been working in the Innovision BC world for about 3 years now, and we are now on Business Central on the cloud and have been since February of 2019. So we were one of the pioneers, I would say, in BC Cloud. We learned a lot from that. So I would say, that's where we're at. I'm the financial controller, so I own the ERP system of Business Central for the company, and yeah, lots of great things.
I'm sensing some stories.
This is my friend. Can you tell? I have wonderful things to say about Belinda during today's session. So yeah.
Awesome. Aw, a whole lot of love. I like it. Yeah. Yes, Dave.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces on the call. My name's Dave Hatker, Vice President of IT for the Lumistella Company. We've actually recently gone through a rebrand, which was kind of fun to deal with that over the last year and a half with COVID, but we pushed forward. We used to be known as CCA&B, and our main product is the Elf on the Shelf. We're family owned in Atlanta, Georgia, where I've been with the company for almost 10 years now, and involved with the NAV user group for a long time on the board and working with a lot of folks here. We just completed an upgrade to the BC14 on-prem version, which is kind of like one of the last on-prem versions of BC. And we are on a multi-phase program to get off of or to get onto extensions. So we've gotten up to the point where we can start using extensions, and then the next step is to actually start using them. But we're off of NAV 2015, and that actually just went live about a week and a half ago. So all of that was successful, and in the midst of doing all that, I deal with all sorts of stuff in the land of IT, including getting my entire company working remotely, which was fun. So we can talk about that in a little bit. And I'll throw it over to Brad.
Thank you, Dave. So I am Brad Everts. I am the IT supervisor here at Garner Foods. I've been here for just over 10 years now. And we are currently running NAV 2018 and in the process of upgrading to BC 18 or testing BC 18. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be running that. We'll be running it in Azure, but infrastructure as a service. So I'll still be managing everything, but we're in the process of getting everything that we have on premise into Azure over the next 6 to 9 months anyway. So trying to get out of the hardware management business.
It's a good move to make.
Yes, it is. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just amazing to think back like 10 years ago, thinking, why would anybody do that? What's the cloud about? All this, and now it's such a no-brainer. I love how that happens. But,
Absolutely.
That's another topic. Kenko?
Yeah, and just on cue, my neighbor has decided to start mowing his lawn. So you may be treated to the sounds of a lawnmower. Because he waited all day till right now. I have worked on, I did a little bit on version 3, but I worked on every version of NAV up to 2018 and then BC. We have, like Mark was kind of saying to start out, it's been an interesting year for us to kind of adjust our training from being in person to virtual. So we've embraced that challenge, and it's been a good learning experience with lots of stories to tell. So should be good.
And that learning experience wasn't code for it's been awful. It truly has been a great learning experience. It's been very surprising to us. Yes. So, Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate Len. I'm the CFO at Laborers International Union of North America. That's LIUNA. I've been on NAV for 5 years. We're NAV 2015, and we're currently doing a conversion to go to the cloud to BC. But what I didn't know until now, or until we started the conversion, was that we have this layer of Serenic and how important Serenic was as a nonprofit, and trying to get that into BC. And it's just been really, really challenging. And I plan on talking a little bit about what we did with getting my team on board with that transition. And we are not a remote-based company at all. So Dave, I think you were saying how you had to roll out everybody into a work from home situation at the same time. And I can relate to that. And I can also relate to, you said elf on the shelf, right? Did I hear you right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right. There's an elf.
I was like, oh, that's
somewhere.
cool. And then as a parent, I was like, that's not cool, because I struggled with that every Christmas, and I still have young kids that believe in it. Yes.
He's locked in a Booker's box, so it's not tequila. Sorry, Kim.
That's okay. Next meeting. There's always a next meeting where you could do that.
All right.
I'm going to pass it over to Randy.
Oh, sorry. And then Randy will be joining us shortly. He had an overlap that was unavoidable. And Amy, would you care to describe who or what ProSci is real quick?
Sure.
Thank
My
you.
name is Amy Hazlett, and I work in the finance department at ProSci. We are located in Fort Collins, Colorado. Yeah. So we are a change management company. So we have methodology and training in the field of change management. Basically helps, it applies methodology to any kind of project changes or anything to help change become more successful. Randy is much better at explaining what we do, but we have offices. We weren't fully remote, but we do have offices in Canada and Australia and Latin America and Iberia area now. So we are working on being a global force, I guess.
So yeah, but we
Fantastic.
do training. So this
Yes.
is, I'm really glad Randy was able to join and talk about our experiences.
Yes, and thank you for corralling him, Amy, because I think it's a fantastic opportunity to hear from not only a provider that's had to deal with it internally and knows how to deal with it, but still probably struggled a bit, and also being responsive to customer issues as well. You guys have a fantastic insight to share, so thank you. All right, well, let's circle back around. And again, each of our panelists has some thoughts to share. Again, ask questions. Let's make it a discussion. So, Missy, you talked about being an early adopter on BC and then struggling through the past year to still get product out the door. How's it been for y'all?
Well, we love Business Central on the cloud. We really, really do. I don't know why Terso decided to do this, but in 2009, they really took everything to the cloud, including BC. So when we had to go remote, we were prepared because everything was on the cloud. And so we had a very easy transition from that perspective. So we were very, very lucky. Since then, we'd already been a year into Business Central on the cloud. So, we're into year 2, actually into year 3 now almost. So, and it's been very educational. I would say right now we've done a lot of process changes, a lot of change management. We could have used Proci, last year or 2, and now we're kind of more on a baseline level where we're just doing enhancement tweaks to Business Central. In the past year, it's been great in some ways to have the virtual experience. We attended the virtual Power BI summit, which was fantastic. We're integrating our Business Central on the cloud into Power BI, and it's really easy to do that. It's easy to do that. Now, modeling the data and everything, you need Belinda for. I wish we would have brought her in months ago. We would be way further along than we are today. She really knows her stuff, and she's fantastic. So there you go, Belinda. There's your plug. We were introduced to Belinda through NewView. It's been great in learning a lot about Power BI and how Business Central can integrate into that, and we can use that for management reporting and just slicing, dicing our data in different ways, and looking at visuals in different ways. So that's really exciting. Other than that, during COVID, we actually lost a resource in our department, so our learning and development was a little bit limited. But we were still able to kind of make some headway on the Power BI, and then we also learned some accounting stuff that's non-system. We worked on our revenue recognition and ASC 606 and ASC 842 and implementing those things and doing accounting memos. So non-system boring stuff, boring financial accounting stuff. So that was our last year.
And so how did you adjust to roll those things out and get the team trained up on that?
Yeah, so we knew, so I had used Power BI at my previous company, which is Promega. It's actually our parent company. And I was in the financial planning and analysis department there. And so I know the power of Power BI. And so we had Tracy, who was one of my employees, attend a Power BI boot camp that Belinda put on a couple of years ago at Summit. And, so that kind of piqued our interest, and we've been slowly self-learning. We've been doing some of the black belt online, so that helps. Like I said, we did the Power BI Summit, which was great. Actually, virtually, I really preferred it because out of 15 available sessions, if I had been in person, I had 28 that I really wanted to see. And this way I was able to kind of, see them, maybe watch them at 1.5, 1.75 times speed. So from that perspective, I got a lot more out of the summit than I would have normally. So I was really appreciative that it was virtual. And my team is and Belinda will tell you, Tracy and I and Mike, who are really the systems people for both for Business Central, and we have Dynamic CRM, and we're putting both into Power BI. They're definitely early adopters, and they're go-getters, and they really understand systems. So I don't really have to push anything. They're self-learners. I'm lucky in that way. They teach me more than anything else.
So how frustrating it is, this is just a question to the open group, when you're watching a video and you can't speed it up. It's 1.25 times at a minimum, right? It's just so, feel like you're getting so much more done, but
It's like watching DVR without the commercials, right?
Yeah, it's like driving the speed limit.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Any questions for me on that?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've got them, but let's turn it over to the group.
There was a couple questions, I think, out there. Greg asked, how have you handled the forced updates?
That's a great question. So typically the minor forced updates, we usually find a bug here or there. We have a developer that is really on call for us. So if we ever run into that, we'll ask the developer, okay, is this something that broke an extension, or is this something that is a Microsoft bug? So he'll help us identify and then report if it's a Microsoft bug or not. And usually if it is a bug, a Microsoft bug, they're very, very quick to push another update. So it doesn't really, it's not super impactful to us with those updates. Now the major updates, those you have to test a little bit more and be a little bit more cautious with. So you can choose when the updates push to your system. So we always push to a sandbox system first, do some testing, make sure everything looks okay, and then schedule the production updates. But we really have not had any issues. So we've been really lucky.
So when you say you found those bugs, how do you find them? Do you basically find them in doing manual testing or do you find them in production? Or do you actually have a pipeline that runs and test that for you on a continuous basis?
No, we do not test on a continuous basis. We don't have the pipeline. When we see an update come through, we'll test the major things. Can we get product out the door? Can we invoice? Can we do our major things and keep product going and keep the money coming in the door? As long as that's happening, there might be some ancillary things that are tweaks that are bugs, but we haven't had any major bugs that have come from Business Central, from Microsoft. We have from some partners, but not from Business Central themselves.
Because so that's not to hijack, Pam. So this is one subject where I'm very passionate about. I believe the ownership of something like that really lies with you, the customer, because you're the one that are the most dependent on this, and that's where you. In my philosophy, you need to have a pipeline running, and I run it every night on certain things where I basically run it against the current version, the next minor version, and the next major version. I don't necessarily look at it every day, but at least that way, if I have any issues, that I know that some potential issues before the upgrade even exists, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you guys about that at some point. But it's just it's one thing that needs to happen. A lot of partners don't do this, and that's because these things were not available really in the NAV world, right? Where the technology was kind of different.
It sounds like a fantastic topic for another chat. Just updates in general, I think. And Henrik, I'll follow up with you for some additional thoughts. So thank you.
Perfect.
Yes, I want to talk to you.
I'm watching the time. Let's go ahead and scoot forward. I still have some questions for Missy, but let's see if we have time to come back. So thank you, Missy. Dave, I have some slides for you. Are you ready?
Yeah, sure. I can jump through this because I know we've got a few other folks, but I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of an overview. As I mentioned, we just did the upgrade. We also run EDI with Lanham. We used to have our own warehouse, but we use a couple 3PLs now, and we do business with all the major retailers. So we're very focused on EDI and dealing with the impact that COVID had with our 3PLs. For those of you all who do use 3PLs, I'm sure you had a lot of impact with people not being able to go into work. We couldn't go do on in-person cycle counts or any of that stuff to check out what was going on there. So that represented a challenge. We also use Charge Logic for credit cards, and as I mentioned, we're in the middle. We've completed the first year of a phased approach. And then we have a data warehouse that we've built in-house that we actually do use Power BI. And we really enjoy it. We also use SSRS reports and some other add-on tools from a company called Dev Express that give sort of that slicing and dicing capability. But our data warehouse is called North Pole Central, and we routinely have to provide training on that, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But we get all sorts of, we do our forecasting through that system. We do a lot of our reporting. We allow for folks to upload templates from our distributors, from our licensees for revenue reporting and things of that nature. So we try to keep nav as vanilla as possible and do sort of all of like our playground, playing in the mud stuff in our data warehouse, where we can make more of a mess of that without fear of causing problems with over customizing. We have an enterprise performance management system called Profix, which we use for all of our forecasting. So everybody who does cash flow forecasting. Interestingly enough, there's a joke in our company that if you flip a coin, you probably own a budget in Profix, because I think half of our employees are budget owners. So there's a lot of we're a smaller company, but there's a lot of need for training on that. And then, also just all of the standard applications people use every day. Microsoft, we use a work management tool called Workfront, which is helpful for project management and approvals, markups, proofing for marketing. And we use that to interface with our external parties, and then all of the other SaaS offerings out there too. So a lot of different things to train on. And I kind of broke up my talking points into sort of two buckets. One is, internal training, with, how do we train the company? How does IT interact and help out everybody? And probably the biggest thing we did was we tossed Skype to the roadside back in March of 2020. When we started getting wind of this, and immediately started working on getting everybody set up on Teams and doing in-person training, because we really felt like if and you can see we're using it right now, but if we could get everybody to be comfortable on that platform, getting everybody to do virtual training would be so much easier. So we do a lot of training with our internal employees using Microsoft Teams, and that a lot of the time will allow us to go ahead and do just an ad hoc conversation with somebody. Sometimes it's that simple, where they just have a one-off question. And the problem with Teams, though, is that I think everybody's also a little bit burnt out. And there's the pros and the cons of it. You can speed up a conference and really get to more things than you might have normally, but it's also all this screen time everybody's getting. I think we're all slightly going crazy because of it. And you're talking to a guy in IT who's used to it. Like, I think I might have actually gotten carpal tunnel over the last year for how much I was actually sitting in front of. I wasn't even going for walks around my house. It was just bouncing from one meeting to another over Teams. And somebody's asking, do we use Power BI in Teams? Yeah, like we've messed around with all of the different add-ons. So it's interesting. You can even see how much Teams has evolved over the last 12 months. It's been really cool watching Microsoft build and develop the tool out to add more components, more tabs in your individual teams. So we've actually embedded like our data warehouse North Pole Central in our master data team in Microsoft Teams. So you don't even have to leave Teams to go to our data warehouse, which is freaking cool. And then at the same time, there's so it's a challenge to almost stay on top of it all, because there's so many service bulletins and updates from Microsoft on, oh, we're adding this, or this is now in preview, or this is in GA, and it's a lot to keep up with. It's overwhelming. So I think part of it is just trying to stay on top of everything without getting overwhelmed. When we do record meetings, we do save them into Microsoft Stream. So if everyone here uses that, that's a great tool. It'll also transcript your recording, so you can go through and search for keywords that are helpful, and that just makes getting to the content you're interested in handy. And you don't spend a bunch of time watching something that you may not care about, but 5 minutes of it. So I'll just say that what I've got taken away is that people really do seem to miss that FaceTime factor. And we're looking at other tools and training programs. So we have an HRIS system, and we'd like to implement the learning management system component of it and kind of build that into our employee performance reviews, so that they have to go through sort of the internal training that we would develop in-house. So like if we wanted to have a course on how to navigate our data warehouse, it may be like a 10-minute course, but they'd have to successfully pass that course in our HRIS system. So that's actually something I'm working with HR on right now. And then there's other tools like Walkme, which ProSci, you all might be familiar with that one, but it's this really cool tool that you can create these tutorials on how to walk through basically any web-based system to show people how to enter data and use it. And I know there's some functionality in BC that I think gives you that capability to make a wizard to walk through and show somebody how to like set up a new customer. But there's also tools like Walkme that can do that, since it's a web-based interface. So just interesting stuff has come up, maybe stuff that I wouldn't have noticed for maybe another year or two, but we've kind of been forced to evolve. And then I'll just say on the external training piece, we haven't had as much time in IT to actually do a whole lot of training. It's been a kind of a bummer because we're just constantly bouncing from one problem to the next and providing support and trying to keep the wheels on the bus, so to speak. So, I'm looking forward to, hopefully, fingers crossed, getting out face to face to a conference. I didn't realize how much I missed it until I didn't have it as much, but I'm one of the types that I really thrive in that environment. And I'll say that being in person at a conference actually provides a firewall to me. As much as I do get work emails and I'll look down at my phone. If I'm actually sitting in a room full of other people at a session, like I actually find that I'm more focused on that than I am sometimes sitting on a training call where I'm kind of doing three things at the same time and also trying to pay attention to one of my monitors and listen to what's going on. So that's just my take. I think everybody has their preferred method. So I'm just looking forward to the future, though, and kind of how we're evolving and using technology, having more remote attendees in live conferences, getting more sessions recorded so I can go back and look at stuff that I missed and watch it in, 1.5 speed, which is awesome. I do all my podcasts that way. And if you ever get a chance, you should speed up Mark Rhodes and listen to him speak fast, because it's quite entertaining. So that's my 2 cents. I'll throw it back over to Mark so we can keep going through.
Yeah, now
and
I'm
any questions?
Intrigued of what I sound like at 1.5 times, because I've never done that, of course. Everybody pop into the chat real quick with the little signals that you can put in. Put in a hand raised if you're not a big fan of virtual conferences, or put in a heart if you are a fan of virtual conferences. And I bet that if I took this poll a year ago and then did it today, we'd have different results. But if you're not a fan, put your hand raised, or if you are, put a heart in the chat there. Oh no, wait, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Oh, we can put, sorry, because I'm not going to see that in the chat. In the chat, put a smiley face or a frowny face. That'll be a lot simpler, right?
If you look at the participant list, you can see all of the hands raised or hearts, I think.
Yeah. Well,
no, it's just
I wanted to get
raised.
in the chat
Never
so
mind.
I could count it up later. Hearts, yes, that's good. So, I never heard it described as a firewall, Dave. I thought that was beautiful, because I'd struggle with the same thing. Of course, despite my best intentions, virtual conference, you can get into a lot more things, but I walk away with really not learning very much, because I'm bouncing back and forth all the time. That's pretty frustrating. Dave, it sounds like you guys have done a phenomenal job adjusting to the need for virtual training over the past year. It doesn't sound like you really missed a beat with everything going on, and it's actually opened you up to more opportunities and more possibilities. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. I think this has forced everyone to get more on board with technology, especially those who weren't hopping on the bandwagon. And hey, Rob, how's it going, man? I just saw your hand go up. It's been a minute. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're still wearing your hat right now.
Oh, always. Dave, did you have to provide extra incentives or deal with some resistance to transition to the virtual classroom?
No, I mean, I think the global situation that everyone was part of, this was, in the greater scheme of things, not the concern everybody had. I think everyone was worried about their job and their health and their family and their friends. So having to use your computer for virtual learning or virtual work was, I think it just wasn't as high on the priority list. And everyone who had an issue, at least at my company, they reached out and we worked with them. And I kind of drove that point home. I'm like, it's your own fault if you're having problems and you don't reach out. Like, here's my phone number. You can call me if your computer's not working, So, and not using, we definitely use the carrot approach, not the stick. So it's more of a supportive, like, please call me. But
right.
Yeah, and it was interesting. The only thing I'll leave on too is that we never actually did any forced training other than the one we did right before the office closed. Everything we've done has been optional. And I still kind of debate whether that's the right approach, because I think we should do a better job incentivizing people. And that's why we're looking at using our HRIS system and the learning management to drive more of like a performance review, like you're paid for doing this stuff, so you need to do it. But being reasonable with what you're asking folks to do. So,
right. Yeah. Very interesting. Any other quick questions before we move on?
I just have a comment. Dave, you said how you're not getting up and moving as much because you're hopping from one virtual meeting to another, and I can relate to that. And some of my colleagues and we have pets, and so we always have our, we need to take the dog for a walk excuse. And I felt bad for my other colleagues who didn't. So I always would say, rather than saying I'm going to go walk the dogs for 20 minutes, I say I'm going to take a mental health break. And like, I have a pregnant woman and I encourage her to get out and walk. And I just want to make sure that everybody had a reason that it was okay to get up and move around, that they didn't have to stay in front of their screen the whole day.
I think that's a great call out. Yeah, I don't think my company's done that great of a job of telling people to do just that, which is super important for your own sanity.
So that's kind of like the days when the smokers used to go outside for a smoke break, but nobody else got a break.
Yeah, those were audit fraud risk meetings. I would send our auditors out to go talk with the smokers. You get so much out of those.
Hey, another quick tip we discovered last year, I forget who in our company shared this, but when you're setting up a calendar appointment in Outlook, you can tell Outlook to automatically subtract 5 or 10 minutes from the end point of that appointment. So you're not literally running back to back. Now, respecting that 5 or 10 minute break is a different story, but you can do that with Outlook, which is pretty cool. All right. Who do we have up? And Brad. All right. Brad, how's training and learning been at Garner Foods over the past year?
So it's been interesting. Before, just a couple months before, COVID really took over here in the U.S., we had started to roll out a new training system, and most of that was going to be classroom-based training and remote, so that you could all sit in the classroom together and sit in groups and answer questions, or each individual could answer questions. And so that kind of got waylaid in the middle of March last year. And so they had to transition the approach more to web-based learning, using the same training system, but just kind of had to figure it out and roll with it. And of course, for us as a food manufacturer, it was really a interesting time, and I know everybody had that, right? people were worried about jobs. They were, worried about their families and whatnot. And we were very fortunate. From a food service standpoint, obviously we took a big hit, but from the retail standpoint, things just took off. We had three different months last year that were record sales months on the retail side. So that's good, right? But that means being busy. And obviously, you can't make Texas Pete or Green Mountain Gringo salsa sitting at home. You can't ship it out the door sitting at home. So from that perspective, our operations team and warehousing and production and whatnot, they were very busy and trying to keep up with things. From our headquarters standpoint, we decided that we were going to split the office up as far as people being in the office a couple days a week and people being at home a few days a week as well. So trying to continue training while half the people are in the office and half the people are at home was a challenge as well. Like Dave, Teams is fantastic. We started using Teams probably about 2.5 years ago. And we had a little group that got together to, all right, how are we going to roll this out? Just strategic, people from different departments strategically placed. And we wanted to do it as a grassroots type deal. And so what we found when last year we started doing more remote training is that people were already using the tool and it just took off. And our team's usage in general has skyrocketed, but it's become really good from a training perspective, being able to share your screen, show people what you're doing. Somebody's having an issue, they can show me exactly what they're doing and I can walk them through, or, sales support can walk them through. So from that perspective, we've really been able to adapt and overcome and been able to keep training going. So
you've done training in a mixed mode. So some people in person, some virtual, huh?
Yeah. So we've still done some in the operation side because of the safe quality food certification that we have, and because of all the OSHA training and whatnot, we've had to continue that, right? We didn't have a choice to stop. OSHA didn't say, oh, there's a pandemic, you don't have to worry about our training this year. You still have to get that accomplished. So but Teams really for me and IT has really been a great tool to be able to use. So
it sounds like you're going to continue with the mixed method, right?
We will, and we'll, as things progress, we'll go back to more of that classroom style training as we're able to. But I think people, for the most part, have been comfortable working remotely and training remotely as well. I was really impressed, especially here at the headquarters. We've got quite a few folks that have been with the company for 20, 30 years. And I was really concerned. I saw the writing on the wall early March. And so I started getting spare laptops ready to go for people to be able to use, to be able to take home. And that way, when my boss came to me and said, hey, we need everybody to start working from home in 2 days. And I said, hey, I've got laptops ready to go, and I started cycling people through and getting them signed in and whatnot and training. And I was just really impressed with how well people did with it, because I had several people that said, I will never be able to work from home, to I love working from home. So, and, a lot of that has just been, they've been able to get that training that they were afraid that they weren't going to be able to get while they were remote.
Fantastic. All right, I'll stop asking questions because we got to move on. But does anybody else have a question for Brad? Feel free to pop it into the chat as well. Let's keep a discussion going there as well, because hey, we can do that. Kimco, it's been an interesting year, right?
Yes, it has been an interesting year for sure. I think one of the biggest things we had to do was definitely to switch our class formats, because I think, to like Dave's point, it is really hard to do virtual training with everything else going on and have somebody pay attention. It's just hard to pay attention for long periods of time to a screen, especially when everything else in your day is looking at the screen for the most part. So I think that the biggest thing we had to do is rework our formats so that we don't do anything more than 4 hours. It's just, it's too hard to get people to engage for a full 8 hours of time. So that was kind of a big adjustment for us. But I think, it took us a couple times to get that right. But in the end, it seems to have worked pretty well for us. The other thing that, and I'm just going to go with a couple of creative things that we had to do this year as well. So one of the things we did, and I think Brad, you touched a little bit on it, it's really hard when you're trying to train like the warehouse or train like somebody in operations. We actually, one of the clients we had, we used their cameras to actually, like all the cameras they had in the production facility, we used the cameras to train somebody on how their processes were in the warehouse. So since we couldn't be on site, it really was actually pretty cool, and you can speed up the video. So it worked really well. I'm not sure the people liked it so well because there was a couple of safety violations while we were watching. But for the most part, it worked out well. So we did have to be creative in kind of some of the things we did when it came to training somebody that's maybe in operations or something where you really do need to be on site. It just works easier.
Hey, the one other thing I'll add on to Kim's comment about adjusting. What we found is, when you're doing training in class, you have, or at least you feel like you can go longer on a particular topic until you get to a certain benefit, a certain win, a certain conclusion, what have you, right? You can spend more time in that. When we converted all our classes to virtual, we took very special care to make sure we're hitting something beneficial, every couple minutes, because of that attention span, right? To keep people engaged and feel like we're making progress when it's already really hard to stay on for 4 hours, and make sure that we're hitting those things on a very regular basis so they feel like they're getting somewhere and want to, stay on and learn the next thing we're going to talk about. So that was a really interesting nuance that we figured out.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, just, that I don't think we've figured out, and I don't think any of the virtual conferences has figured out quite yet, is that whole networking experience, right?
Yeah.
So, in a classroom, there's a lot of times where you'll take a break and somebody will come up and ask you questions and you'll get on a topic and, you really get to have a great conversation. So I still don't think we've figured that out. I haven't been in one virtual conference yet that's figured that out, but, we tried to kind of leave like 15 minutes at the end just for discussion, or we also just added, an hour here, during the week as part of it, like an extra hour where it's kind of like office hours. So somebody could show up and schedule, one of our experts' time, usually Carrie, because it's usually a finance question. So, it's that we're still struggling to solve that issue.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Kate, go ahead.
It's Kate. But I wanted to add a comment to what Kim was pointing out about how people and networking. And you have a really good point where when you're in those conferences, I don't think people, or maybe this is how I feel, is I don't feel comfortable raising a question or a comment in a group of 300 people that I think is like more personal or tailored to my situation. So when you're networking in person, you can single that person out and have that quick conversation, and not everybody else in the room needs to participate.
I 110% agree with that. It's the same thing.
It's a great observation. Yeah.
And I think Greg had a great comment about cameras. Like that's something we really push for as well. It's like in the virtual sessions that we host, that everybody has to be on camera, unless there's like some. And usually we could get. I haven't had anybody push back yet and say they couldn't be. But yeah, because if you can't read the room, it makes it even harder.
It's true.
Yes. All right. Yes, Kate, what's been your experience over the past year? And it sounds like it's you still were in person a bit, so maybe you didn't experience some of the challenges, but.
Yeah, actually, I do want to talk about that. So a little background about LIUNA, or if you're in Canada, we pronounce it LIUNA. It's a labor union. It's construction based. I think I told you this already. They're construction workers. You know, if you're in Pennsylvania, those are probably laborers on the road the entire year, or fixing the bridges, and actually my colleague just texted me, a pedestrian bridge collapsed here in DC. I'm based out of here in DC.
Wow.
And that is not good news. But being a labor union, one of our groups of members are the mail handlers. So for us, it's really important that we're cutting checks from the financial side. We're cutting physical checks and we're mailing them out, because our members, they're going to handle them and sort them and pass it along. We want to encourage that our actions are giving our members jobs. So for us to go remote and pay via ACH or wire payment, like that was not even on the table, because we have to cut these checks. So when our office closed down, everybody got to work from home except for the accounting department. All of us had to stagger and come in a couple days a week. Half of my workforce didn't even have laptops for the first, 3 or 4 months of shutdown. They were just at home enjoying a long paid vacation. So there's just 3 things, kind of a different topic of what you guys had already covered that I was going to talk about. One is the importance of communication, and we don't use Teams. The only thing that's Microsoft based is our accounting ledger. We use Google for everything else, and it's really different. Okay, so some people like Google for work. I am not one of them, but I like GChat. So we formed a work from home chat with my managers, and we would just pop on there and over communicate. I couldn't say thank you, Belinda. I couldn't say that over communication is probably the biggest thing that saved us in that transition, because being some of us working from home and some of us in the office, we were fluid in our duties and what had to get done. That was one of the 3 things. The second thing is we were going through, and we still are going through, an accounting migration. And we don't produce anything. We have members that's handled in a separate database. We're just using Nav and Business Central from a financial standpoint. And that has been a struggle for us. And I have subject matter experts that we meet weekly to go over in depth on the topics, and then they push that training out to the staff. And every week we have a staff meeting and we go over like what we covered that week, and we do it on the screen. I'll share my screen with my team and we'll walk through it together. And sometimes it's smooth and it works and I look like I know what I'm doing. And other times I'm thinking, this worked the other day, but for whatever reason, it's not working today. And of course, I would say that happens probably 40% of the time. So that I didn't care for so much. I noticed though, and I think Kim, you commented on this, not everybody shares their screen. So a lot of the times I couldn't assess, like, are they understanding? Do they have questions? Are they even paying attention? Because myself and my comptroller are one of the two people that shared their video feed. Everyone else just had it off. And I struggled with that, and I still struggle with that. So
anybody, quick, what percentage of communication is nonverbal? This just hit me, right? This is why it's so difficult.
Yeah, isn't it like 80% or something like that?
Yeah.
It's high. Mark, I think you had that in your, you actually had that in one of your training sessions at like 2 years ago.
Okay.
I remember that. I was impressed. I was surprised by that. So the drawbacks of those weekly meetings were the very few people showed their faces. And I think that if I'm not seeing them on the 2 days that I'm in the office, then I really can't assess, like, how are they feeling in this work environment. And then also people didn't ask questions. And then that goes back to, well, do they feel comfortable raising it? It was only a group of 10, but did they feel comfortable raising that question or a question in front of others? And then the third, and me too, I have no poker face. And then the third and final is we actually hired somebody during COVID, which I was put off for the longest time. And then finally, a year later, they're like, go ahead and hire a person, and you got to onboard them remotely. And it was kind of a hybrid onboarding process. And so the biggest thing I wanted to make sure that was transferred to this new hire was the culture, because they're not in the office. They're not interacting with the other people. They're not meeting, like, well, who's reporting to whom? What are the office politics? And so I had scheduled meetings through Google, and they would be face-to-face with the new hire. And we would just talk about the culture and the history and who reports to who. And I felt like that was at least a good way to get their toes wet before they actually meet the person. Unfortunately, that new hire resigned after 2 months and didn't stick through with it. And that was a bummer. For health reasons, COVID, you know, it just kind of changes everybody's perspective. Yeah.
It would be interesting if we had stats on how many hires during COVID didn't work out because you just miss so much in the interview process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even touch on the interview process and how that evolved and changed, and that was completely different.
Boy, so much to unpack there, Kate. Thank you so much. We've done a couple things around those in particular. When a new hire comes on with us, they schedule half-hour meetings with each and every person just to talk, just to get to know each other, that kind of thing. Because you don't get that from the office that you normally would. So yes, thank you very much. I noticed the time. If you don't absolutely have to go, do not go anywhere, because you want to hear from Randy in a second. But if you absolutely have to go, I'm going to paste in our survey link into the chat here for you to provide feedback. But let's get to Randy. Like I mentioned earlier, I think ProSci's got a very unique position on this topic over the past year, having to worry about it internally and externally. Randy, what have you seen?
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. And I joined about a half hour ago, and it's been great to hear the stories from everybody I was able to catch. So thanks for the opportunity. I think it's funny that you talked about kind of wanting to be in the office. I'm looking at the camera and I can see Amy, one of my colleagues. She's in the office. She's been dying to get in the office, and it's because she's one of those folks that really likes that the ProSci culture and just being with being with her colleagues. And we're trying to do our best to give options to people that want to be there, like Amy wants to be there, and those that aren't quite ready, whether that's for, they're just nervous about it, or they still have something going on, personally with a family member or whatever, and they can't be there. So I guess that's just one thing I would add to the ProSci experiences. As far as return to office goes, we are taking a slow approach, but for those that want to be there, like Amy, we definitely encourage it. So I'd love to give you a perspective from ProSci. So I think you know who we are, one of the global leaders in change management. We really have kind of three main things we do to kind of fulfill our mission of helping individuals and organizations build their change management capability. And so it's really training, advisory services, and licensing. And so training's probably, I don't know, about 40% of the business. So when the first week of March rolled around last year, and we had been on record saying, over our dead bodies, we'll do virtual training, we had a problem. And so luckily in the middle of February, we started to, get little inklings from our partners in Asia that, there was definitely something coming. Obviously, we didn't know that, it would be coming to this degree. But we started a little bit in the virtualization, and as soon as it became clear that we could no longer go on site to do training or go to public venues to do training, we flipped quickly to virtual. And so we virtualized our whole training and advisory portfolio probably in about 3 months' time. But we flipped over our flagship program, which is a certification, in about 2 weeks. And so I think we got kicked out of the office on Friday, the 13th of March. And I think we had our first program virtually on March 16th. And so we were up and running for those that could come to training. Now, one of the things we saw is our training volume, March, April, and May, basically was cut maybe by 80%. And it was because of a variety of factors. One, everybody was going home and trying to figure out just what to do. And as I've heard all of you say, training wasn't the priority at that point. It was keeping the lights on and figuring out how you're going to run the business. And so we had to give our clients a lot of space to be able to figure out kind of their own business and then come back to us when they're ready. I think we had about 80 enterprise programs that were booked and scheduled come off the books. And so we've been working really hard for the past, 15 months to get those back. And I think we're at about 85% of those have been completed, and there's still some stragglers, and we'll get them when they're ready. In the virtualization process, I would say that many of the things you touched on, keeping it as short as you can, having a lot of breaks. We use actually, this is not to offend anybody, but in the training environment, we often use Zoom. And the reason we like Zoom is some of the advanced breakout room features that they have, and being able to break people out and bring them back. Now, I know Microsoft Teams has improved that a bunch over the last couple of months, but as we came up and running in the virtual space, when we wanted to create an experience, which is what ProSci is known for, we had to have like every technology tip, tool possible to make that happen. So we use breakout rooms, we use interactive polling using something called Poll Everywhere. We use that during the session, a lot of different interactive discussions so that we can keep that experience there. The last thing I'd say, and then I'd just love to see if there's any questions, is, we're, 15 months into this now, and we're probably going to do, 600 or 700 training programs this year. And I was just doing the math in my head. I think about 5% of those will be face-to-face. So we're still in a heavily virtual environment. We're doing a couple face-to-face programs a month. I think that's going to pick up a bit here, July, August, September. But no one has really said, you know what, let's just all go back to face-to-face and get it going. So I expect our business will end up in maybe a 50-50 split forever. Post-pandemic, and that there'll always be people that really want this virtual environment. So that's the quick down and dirty 5-minute version of kind of how we've adjusted to the pandemic and kind of what our customers have needed from us.
Can I ask a general question?
Yeah, sure.
To everyone, I was just wondering, has anybody else, have their companies addressed kind of the mental and emotional aspect of what employees have gone through during COVID?
I'll say that ours has not addressed it, and I think it's because of our culture wouldn't have addressed something like that in the first place, unfortunately. I think on an individual basis, though, like I'm a working mother, and I know that my schedule is more hectic, and with kids from home, I took every opportunity to go in the office that was possible, but other people didn't have that flexibility, and just being more flexible with their schedules and starting the workday later or taking a longer lunch break. Trying to be empathetic there, but not company wide, just department wide.
Yeah, I
So-
think sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think ProSci has definitely allowed the flexibility needed to flex our hours if we can and that kind of stuff. But one of the biggest things that helped me, I'm a very social person, so it was really hard for me mentally to be, working from home all the time. And one of the things, I think it was back in June of last year, ProSci encouraged everybody to sign up on a wellness team. And they just said wellness, it doesn't have to be physical, but it can be, if somebody wants to get out, like bicycle riders want to get out and they want to join a team and they want to, encourage each other to do that. Or it could be, whatever kind of wellness that you need. And the team that you created would encourage each other to take the time that they need to do what they needed to stay well, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever. And I can tell you that I still, every 3 weeks, get together with my wellness team from last June until now. And so that's been a huge piece of my, me being able to make it through this last year.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's fantastic.
So, Missy, to answer your question, we have a really small team, but one of the things that we've done probably for the last 2 years is we have a kind of a business coach, but she's more of like I think she's actually a psychologist or one of those psychiatrists or psychologists. But so we do afternoons with Sunny once a month, and she's amazing. Like I know Mark has said, like, her voice, like she walked us through some meditation, some stress release, and I know that sounds like all touchy-feely, but it actually, I think a lot of people were surprised at how much it helped.
Yeah.
Just when everything was kind of starting.
That's great.
I don't think we're going to know the effect for a long time. I think it's going to affect so many people in so many different ways. And Amy was able to acknowledge her effect pretty immediately. But I think a lot of people, it definitely has made me more of a hermit than I usually am. I mean, so how that will change things long run, we'll see.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's definitely made me more of a hermit. It kind of suits me. But what I was going to say was that the Microsoft partner I work for has instituted a quarterly mental health day. So they have they've retained a company who does mental health training with the whole team to mix us all up into different cross-disciplinary groups. So you're not necessarily working with the people that you work with all the time. And they go through this kind of mental health awareness course. So it's not just to do with recognizing it in yourself, but it's also to do with recognizing it in your workmates and the things to look out for and ways to address those issues if you see them. And I think that's a really positive thing. I was really impressed that they did that.
Yeah, we had a training like that on Monday, actually, at our company that was focused on mental health. But yeah, I think it's been difficult. It's been difficult. I mean, I used to do a lot of yoga, and watching my yoga studio struggle to get on, Zoom calls and everybody flexing, like even finding the access to those wellness programs, those programs have had to adapt at the same time. I'm sorry, I think I interrupted. Maybe you can.
I know, I was going to just say a couple other partners I know in the Microsoft space have bought their employees accounts with some of the online therapy things that have popped up. And I think they have found that helpful.
Randy, I want to circle
Thank
back
everybody
to you.
for your answers. Sorry.
Oh, Randy, I want to circle back to you with your customers. Have you seen a shift in don't know how to put this right. The attitude towards training and the importance of continuous learning.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think at the, maybe in the March through maybe August timeframe, maybe March through May is just everybody was in a panic and getting used to the new environment. That was understandable. But I think even maybe through the summer, organizations were, in very much in firefighting mode and weren't dedicating time to educating their personnel. So for example, if we had a leadership training that's supposed to take 6 hours, 95% of the time we would do that in one day. As we move through the summer, they'd say, you know what, we need to do this, 1 hour every Friday for 6 weeks, which is great, but it really takes away the impact of it's great to get those 6 hours with those leaders, but it takes away the impact that we're trying to achieve and the experience that we're trying to provide. So we did see a lot of those kind of odd requests through the summer, but quite honestly, once the fall hit, what we've been seeing from our customers is that training is back on the table. It's important. Our numbers from a revenue perspective would say that, we're back on our growth trajectory from 2019. So I think it's back and people are seeing the importance of it again. But for sure there for about 6 months, it was on the back burner and not the priority.
You bring up a great point about the difference. We've experienced that too. When you start stretching out the training, there are pros and cons, right? It's more convenient, but then you lose some of that continuity. It's hopefully we'll take the creative ideas that have popped up and be able to apply them to how we used to do it. Come up with a new method that's even better. Yeah. Yep. Hey, I see quite a few people dropping off. So any other further questions for those who are on still?
Mark, this is Brad. So I had to get in the car and transition, but I think it's a lot easier too to get people together for 6 hours one day than it is to get people together for 1 hour 6 days, right? Because the schedules are so hard. I can dedicate a day, and like David was talking about earlier, it's kind of being in a in-person conference is kind of like that firewall for you and whatnot. But like trying to join a meeting for an hour six times is just a lot more difficult, I feel like. So you end up losing some of the people. You lose that continuity, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Somewhere in the middle.
Right.
All right.
Mark, maybe one thing on the wellness front. I'm going to find the email I got. It was from HubSpot, and they're having a global week-long recharge week. And they were sending it to their customers to say, by the way, if you reach out to us, it's going to be delayed, and we're doing so. They're taking a step back, and I'm going to find the email because it was really well listed out all the things they were doing. And I'll throw it in the chat here because I just think it's another example of what other companies are doing, and it's well beyond what ProSci did. And I think ProSci was doing a pretty good job, but I think it's always good to see what organizations are doing because there's great ideas out there.
Right. Very interesting. I was reflecting on, I forget whose comment about just the grace, right? We went from there's dogs and babies crying in the background and everything else is going on to where that's just standard and it's understood that's going to happen. No big deal, right? So a lot of people have, right, they've shifted expectations a bit, yet we've almost at the same time sped up expectations as well for turnaround time and how much you can cram in and everything else. So it's just interesting to me. I wish I had better answers for all that, but I'm going to post in the chat the survey link again, pop up the reminder for the July Mix It Up, where we'll be talking about the app source faves. We've had a couple of the panelists drop off already, but I'd just like to extend again, just deep appreciation for everybody responding to the call and agreeing to share their insights and talk about some, internal situations and being open to sharing like that. So thank you very much for everybody who was on the panel and willing to share. And with that, I'll remind you, we'll set this recording out on the YouTube channel if you'd like to pass it along to your friends and family. And everybody else, thanks for joining today. And looking forward to next month and have a good summer. Stay safe. Thanks, everybody.